Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a otra clase de Satchel. Soy Mr. Castrillon. Today, I would like to welcome you to a lesson that is slightly different from the ones that we've seen so far. Today's lesson is a lot to do with verbs, those action words that we use every single day, every single second of our lives. And the most important thing about today's lesson is that it's a bit of an intro to a topic that, although it's not kind of clear or explicit to many of us when we are learning a language, it does require a lot of practice. And that's why we decided to do this lesson. The lesson is called Conjuguemos a ar. And basically what we're going to be doing today is vamos a aprender a conjugar verbos terminados en ar. Vamos a conjugar verbos regulares en presente simple y vamos a practicar con oraciones y frases comunes. We will be including some irregular verbs in Spanish as well. But before we continue, it's important to know what we understand by an AR verb, un verbo AR. So it's any verb in Spanish that ends in AR. That's the first and most important thing. And we can find two types of verbs, regular and irregular. We're going to be doing some work with regular verbs today, and I will be introducing a couple of or three of the most common irregular AR verbs that we have in Spanish and that we tend to use a lot. And finally, we will be learning regular verbs mainly. And this is really important. Now, there are three, I would call them families of verbs. One is AR verb, as the ones that we're going to learn today. And then we have two other families, the ER and the IR verbs. Now, these ones will have a similar pattern to the ones we're going to see today. The reason why we started with the ARs is because most of the verbs in Spanish end in AR, and the changes that you're going to learn today are applied to most of these verbs. Now, before we start, let's start with cómo se dice en español. How do you say this in Spanish? I'm going to show you some verbs: to dance, to sing, to buy, to search, to teach, to listen to study. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to try and work out how you say those verbs in Spanish. You're going to start from now. 2 minutes for you to work out the meaning of these words or the translation of these words into Spanish. I'm back. How did that go? I hope you managed to actually translate all of these verbs because they are very important. They are crucial when you are actually doing your exercises in Spanish. So let's have a look and see what they actually are in Spanish. So the first one we have bailar. Repeat after me. Bailar. Be careful with that AI there. Bailar. Buscar. That means search in Spanish. Buscar. Cantar. Cantar. Comprar. Comprar. Enseñar. Enseñar. Escuchar. Escuchar. Estudiar. Estudiar. So as you can see, all of these verbs end in AR. So let's take and see whether you're able to remember the spelling of these 7 very important AR verbs. I'll give you 1 minute to copy them down and fill in those gaps. Go for it. 1 minute. Right. Let's see how you did this time. There we go. Double check your answers. Check the spelling. Check that your spelling matches my spelling on the slide. And also give yourself a tick or a smiley face if you've actually managed to get them all correct, or at least one or two. So all of these verbs are AR verbs. I'm going to choose one of those, only one, hablar. And whatever you are going to learn with these verbs, you are allowed to use it with any regular AR verbs today. Now, hablar means to speak. And what you're going to learn is how to say I speak, you speak, we speak, and so on. So let's say I have yo, tú, él, ella, nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ellas. As you can see, I have leave out the AR and I have included or I have left the via habla, so to speak. Now, why did I do that? Well, because this here is what we call the root of the verb. And they are called regular verbs because of that. Because what we are going to do is we are going to be changing the ending, the AR, and we're going to leave the root or the first half of the verb or the first part of it untouched. We are not going to do anything to it. And that's why it's so easy to remember how to conjugate AR regular verbs. Okay? So let's have a look and see what happens. Well, for the first one, yo hablo. Tú hablas. Él, ella habla. Nosotros hablamos. Vosotros habláis. Ellos, ellas hablan. So as you can see, the yellow bits match what we call the pronouns. Now remember, the pronouns are words that we use to replace a noun. For instance, on the first one, yo hablo. And instead of saying Felix, which is my name, I would say yo, I. Now, if I want to use él o ella, then I would say habla, tú hablas. Now, something really interesting in Spanish is that we tend to leave out these pronouns. And we are allowed to do that because the ending at the end of the verb allows us to know who we are talking about. For instance, I could easily say, hablo español. And by that, I mean, I speak Spanish. That said, you are more than welcome to say, yo hablo español. And that is not a problem whatsoever. Now, there is a long list of verbs that will use this conjugation. I have a very small fraction of all the verbs that can use or that usually apply this rule. But I have chosen those ones that are very common in your exams or your writing section. So we have bailar, buscar, cantar, comprar, enseñar, escuchar, estudiar, hablar, necesitar, pagar, practicar, regresar, tocar, tomar, trabajar. If you don't know any of these verbs, feel free to copy them down. Or even better, take a picture with your phone of this section, or come back to the video, pause it, and have a look at it. The most important thing to remember is that all of these verbs will use this conjugation. They will change in exactly the same way when you want to use it and you want to say, for instance, we work on Mondays. And that means that we are going to use the conjugation from we, which is nosotros, on the verb trabajar. So you'll have to leave out the AR and add AMOS. Okay, so let's practice a little bit. I have these sentences here, and we're going to translate these ones into English. By the way, bailar means dance, to dance. So if you want to go only with the basic level, there's nothing wrong with that. All you need to translate is the yellow section. Bailo, bailas, baila, bailamos, bailais, bailan. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, then feel free to do the blue and the yellow. Then you'll be able to kind of have a good sentence. But if you want to be challenged and you want to go the extra mile, then do the green, yellow, and the blue. And you'll have a really good sentence, long one, with all the conjugations for bailar in simple present. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do as many as you can, but also so you can challenge yourself a lot with this exercise. 3 minutes for this exercise. Go for it. How did that go? I hope you did really well today. Now, I'm going to translate each sentence, blue, yellow, and green, so you know what it means. Yo bailo tango means I dance tango. ¿Por qué bailas tan rápido? Why do you dance so fast? Mi hermana baila con mi madre. My sister dances with my father. Nosotros bailamos todos los días. We dance every day. ¿Dónde bailáis los fines de semana? Where do you dance at weekends? Mis amigos bailan muchos ritmos. My friends dance lots of rhythms. As you can see, it's very straightforward, but of course, the more you practice, the better it is. And that's why we are going to practice a bit more with this. I would like you to choose the right conjugation from the red box in order to complete the yellow one. So, for instance, on the first one, it says, En el colegio yo muchas asignaturas. Now, I'm giving you the verb that you need to use to fill in the gap. The question is, which one are you going to use from the red box? And you will find the right verb in this box here to fill in that box there, in this gap. So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to fill in those gaps with the verbs that you have in the box. If you finish earlier, write new sentences in Spanish with the remaining verbs. Go for it, 2 minutes. I'm back. How did it go? Let's have a look and see which verbs we need to use from the red box in order to fill in the gaps in our yellow one. Here we go. En el colegio yo estudio muchas asignaturas. Mi maestro de español enseña muy bien. Nosotros hablamos muchos idiomas. ¿Qué música escuchas? Mis hermanas bailan tango y salsa. Very important. Always write new sentences with these verbs that are in the red box so you can practice a bit more. Now, there are some irregularities, by the way. There are verbs in Spanish that end in AR that are irregular. That means that the root of the verb will change as well. Let's check one example. Recordar ends in AR. The root is record, and the verb means to remember. Now, let's have a look and see what happens to recordar. So I would like you to have a look and see what's going on with the O. Exactly. The O changed into UE when you have I, you, he, or they. It won't change when you have you in plural or we. And this happens only because in Spanish, the sound would be slightly awkward. When you say, for instance, yo recuerdo, that doesn't sound right to us. So that's why we need to change that O into a U and E. There are many verbs that follow that pattern, like acordar, colgar, acostar, rogar, almorzar, contar. Feel free to take a picture of this or take notes of these verbs so you can actually ask your teacher and see what they mean and how you would use them in real life. We also have pensar, a very important verb. Pensar, to think. Is used not only as in like I think about someone, but also as an opinion, like I think that is very important. Now, that verb will also have a change on the root. Can you notice the change? Can you see what's going on? Exactly, it's going from E to IE. Now, there is another one that is a very important verb that we use all the time, estar. And now the change is not going to happen on the root, it's going to happen at the end. So we have estoy, estás, está. Estamos, estáis, stays the same, but then están. So keep an eye on those very tiny little changes because they are very important when you're writing or when you're speaking in Spanish. I hope today's lesson has helped you understand a little bit of what regular verbs are and wow or how we translate or conjugate these verbs in Spanish. Something important is don't you ever forget that there are many more verbs out there, loads of them. There are more AR verbs than any other verbs in Spanish, like ER or IR. But today we did an intro to these AR verbs. In another lesson, we're going to be covering ER verbs and how we change them. And then we will also cover what happens in other tenses, like simple past or like future. In the meantime, I would like to wish you a really good day and I hope I can see you soon. Hasta muy pronto y muchas gracias.